like on the main floor right there.
Welcome back to the afternoon. As you might notice, there's a downgrade in committee chairman. So I'm going to take the helm for the afternoon, the short session. It's easier for us house people get through a few less hours and try to keep us on schedule. So while people wander in, we are currently on 26 LSO 0118, and I am going to close public comment, which wasn't exactly officially done at the end of the morning. And we are going to get a committee directive. We're waiting for Representative Harshman, but committee, what's your pleasure? It's been moved by Representative Campbell.
I had a question for the Game and Fish that I wanted to ask before we do anything.
Well, we have a motion on the table now, so we can certainly, that's up to you, Representative. I think that we've closed public comment to discuss the bill. If you want to clarify, we can go there, but we also, can we do it during discussions during the bill, or?
Well, I guess it's the pleasure of the chairman, but I didn't realize we were going to not have public comment. They didn't comment before, and I told them at break I had a question I wanted them to address, but however you want to do it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the Representative Campbell has decided to withdraw her motion. I guess at this point, public comment is closed. If a committee member has a question of the Game and Fish, we can do that. I want to keep it pretty tight because we need to decide if we're going to move forward with this or what we're going to do. So if you want to, Representative Wharf, call someone up, please feel free to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
And I will keep it brief. I kind of was under the impression from testimony received earlier that this language is going to kind of make all the problems go away. And in fact, I wanted to hear testimony from the Game and Fish as far as what they think this would do as far as their time commitment. If this were to pass, what kind of time commitments that going to put on top of the Game and Fish if the public now thinks they can corner cross? So I'm not sure who wants to address that. But
Well, I certainly don't want to put Chief Smith on the spot if he's not prepared for this. Mr. Co-Chair, do you have a comment?
Mr. Chairman, with the motion, I just wondered if you needed a second.
She withdrew it.
Oh, okay, it's
Yep,
withdrawn.
it's
Thank you very
withdrawn, so-
much. And yeah, you're on track then. That's fine.
Chief Smith, and don't think we need to go too deep into this. If there's not an appropriate time, I'm happy to carry on without the answer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, committee members. I'm Dan Smith, the Chief Game Warden for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And so I guess I need you to readdress the question to me.
Okay, and I'm sorry, because I mentioned this when we went to recess. You were not here when we took the noon break, but it was kind of testimony was that if we pass this, it kind of makes all the problems go away because it clarifies that you can walk from one corner to the next on a public corner to another public corner. But I don't think that's true. I think this is going to lead to more calls, more conflict with the Game and Fish being called. Normally, it would be the county sheriff if it's out of hunting season, but hunting season, everybody's going to be calling the game warden saying the guy trespassed. So somebody's going to have to go verify that whoever it was crossed legitimately in the corner or qualify that they did not. And if that's the case, I want to know if this were to pass, how much more time is going to be taken out of the game wardens drawing them just to this specific problem of corner crossing.
Chief Smith?
Question, and then we can move on.
Representative Wharf, it's a great question. So as you already know, in criminal trespass, a person has to be notified that they're trespassing and asked to leave, or has to be signed or something like that. In a hunting trespass in Title 23, it's pretty much strict liability on the sportsman to know where they are. And so, you know, in areas like where there's no fence, you can be charged with trespass for literally stepping onto their property. We try to negotiate a little discretion there, you know, if it's difficult, because as we've discussed earlier, GPSs aren't exactly accurate, but we do try to, you know, kind of get the sportsman to like not push the line as well. On a corner crossing issue, as it is currently written with corner crossing without causing damage, I would say that we're probably still going to get calls, because if you feel like your property's been damaged and it's not defined what damage is, we're still going to be called to come out. And so it's going to come back to, did they physically touch the ground, which could put them into the trespass under the Title 23. And they would not have to be notified there. So I believe that we will still get calls from landowners, especially if you don't agree with the corner crossing law, that we're going to be called to come out and investigate to see if they touched the ground there or not. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Yeah, I guess what I would like to know, and I'm asking you to get out your crystal ball, which isn't really fair, but I just think if word went out that the state allowed corner crossing, we'd have a lot more sportsmen that would try to attempt to use the corner crossing law to allow access to areas they haven't had access in the past. And I would suppose that that means rather than a handful of people, it's going to be a lot of people heading to the country, and you're going to constantly be getting calls saying, you got another trespasser, that somebody has to go investigate whether or not they crossed the corner.
Mr.
Chief
Chairman.
Smith, please.
Representative Wharf, I think based on the 10th Circuit Court decision, that's going to happen regardless of where this bill goes, because currently under that ruling, it is legal to corner cross. And so I expect that there will be more sports people using that decision to try to go out. And so I would expect that we probably will have an increase in calls on that. I can't put a number to what that'll look like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Smith. And committee, at this point, it's the committee's directive of what they want to do. So thank you for clarifying that. That is a hard question to answer and doesn't really have an answer at this point. I don't think so. Thank you, Chief Smith. Committee, back to where we were. What is your pleasure for 26 LSO 0118? Representative Campbell has moved the bill. Representative Provenza has seconded the bill. Committee, let's go through the bill unless we have any general comments. Let's work the bill starting on page 1. Any amendments on page 1? Amendments on page 1. Page 2, any amendments on page 2? Moving on to page 3. Committee, any amendments on page 3? Are we sleeping from lunch? That's fine if we are. Amendments on page 3, committee? Okay. Do we have any general discussions on this bill with no amendments as presented? Representative Wharf, please.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I do think this is very problematic. I think we're being asked to put our foot on the scales. I think this is something that is going to require, I don't know how this gets resolved without it going to the Supreme Court. And this is a major change. And while I agree with sportsmen that they want access to their land, I don't think this is the best avenue. Because I think this, unlike what was presented by some of the testimony, I think this is going to just cause more and more chaos afield right now. There really is no answer. We heard testimony that's probably already going to be the case. We can't do anything about this hunting season, but I do think this law is just flipping the coin, because what it used to be is we took the side of the private landowner and said their rights superseded that of the public to use their land. And it's like I said, it's not a big deal when you think of one guy, but when it's 1,000 people, I think about my backyard. If it's a shortcut to cut across my backyard to get to the park, I don't want people going across my yard because it's the quickest, most easiest way for them. And I can't blame somebody that has their private property that they don't want people on it. They pay taxes, they do a lot of things, but I think that's something that we all would agree is that private property rights has always been something that we protected. And it's, to me, that's the issue I see, is all we've done is we've flipped it and we said, what used to be illegal, now we're saying is illegal. And I still think the jury's out on that. I think it's wrong to assume that. It's still tied up in court. It's been appealed. And I think there's better avenues than to pass this law that puts our foot on the scales in favor of the public against the private landowners that, to me, have guaranteed rights. It was said in testimony, we have the right for an opportunity to hunt. It doesn't say we have the right to trespass on somebody's private land to gain access. And it's been stated the current technology that we have today, it's even worse when you get into really remote areas. If you can only get 1 or 2 satellites, you might not even be able to get a reading. You know, it is good in some areas, but there's a lot of people, I'm not sure how many of the committee members know how much properties out there that's not fenced, that's not marked, but I can tell you, it is something that there's not as many markers out there as people would maybe have you believe. And so what we're talking about is having this big ambiguity, and we're saying now, no, you can cross at the corners, whereas in the past, that was never allowed. And this is huge. I'd rather get rid of all the checkerboard property. I'd rather look at other things, but what we have before us right now is this bill, Mr. Chairman. And so I'm going to speak against it just because I don't think it's ready. I think it's not going to do what was said in testimony. I think it's just going to be a debacle.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. Committee, any other comments? Senator Boner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be against this bill as well for several reasons. First of all, the fact that it's being appealed currently. I don't think this is necessarily settled. And second of all, we had quite a bit of discussion as to whether, if the premise of this whole thing is that we have to just kind of codify what the federal courts have done. I don't think that's true. So the entire framing of this, I think, is disingenuous. It's not a clarification, it's an expansion. We're including state and private land. Looking through, I haven't had a chance to look through the original case in detail, but we're talking about public land throughout. That's different from state trust land. It's different from land owned by a county or a municipality. I think this is a significant expansion compared to what the court did, or it could be. We just don't know right now. And then, of course, we're talking about the idea of not causing damage. That's different from what the court said also, where they said they're not allowed to touch private property. So let's just be honest about this. This is a significant expansion. This is this committee and I guess ultimately the legislature weighing in on something which has not included input from the other party involved, which is the landowners. So that's not how we do things, I think, especially in the interim. I wish we could have had a more collaborative approach, maybe expanding on access, yes, or something like that. That takes property rights into account while still providing more access. And so I'll be opposed to this bill for those reasons.
Thank you, Senator Boner. I think the process today has been quite open and it's been on our agenda for a while. So, and every one of our landowners is certainly welcome to contact us. So I appreciate those comments. I would say that we had open testimony. We had it at our Du Bois meeting. And committee, any other comments on this bill? Senator Hicks, please.
Mr. Chairman, I just was wondering if you wanted to take a straw poll on how you think I'm going to vote on this. No, Mr. Chairman, in all sincerity, I've always supported the concept, but like everything in life, devil's in the details. And right now, this looked like an expansion of opportunity for attorneys to get a whole bunch of new clients, because I'm not convinced when you just have to say my intent was to do this and there's no benchmark or limit that says this is where we're at. And so, again, while I support the concept, the details are not here sufficiently. I would concur with some of my colleagues. I think this is actually going to create more problems. And investigations and court times and sheriff's calls, because nobody knows what the limit is. And I'm also cognizant, I think, this starts to look a lot like a government's takings without knowing what the limit of the law is. There's no limit in here. You can't tell me whether it's 10 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, so there's no limit. So at some point in time, it will be argued in court, and we will try to define what's reasonable and what intent means. I'm also cognizant of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution that moves into the directions of a takings of private property by granting this. I just intended to get to public land. And so I support what we're trying to do here. I'm really concerned that this vehicle just threw the door open.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You sound surprised. I have a little opinion on this. And I understand right now that corner crossings are legal. Where I'm having my issue, trying to convince myself on this bill, is that in the very enacting part of this where it says, exemption to the offenses of trespass, game and fish trespass regarding incidental contact associated with crossing. Incidental. And then you go back into here and you start talking about being able to do this without causing damage. And what's incidental? And how do one person's idea of damage versus another person's, so that's where my hangup is, so I don't know. I probably won't vote for this.
Thank you, Representative Connolly. Senator Jones, please.
Mr. Chairman, I do think that we could wait a little bit on this. I am going to be a no right now, just because the hunters have said they don't want it. The landowners have said they don't want it. So who are we helping right now? That's a big question. They talked about hunters using e-bikes and things now. I know there's like a one-wheeled bike I've seen that you can transport your game on. I mean, is that going to cause damage? I don't know. And I don't know if we're protecting or who we're helping by passing this right now. I think we might be doing more damage than we are helping to both sides.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Schuler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I can go either way on this. If we hold off and don't do anything today, that's great. You know, growing up on a ranch, you know, my dad was always really good about letting people hunt. We always had some good actors. We had some bad actors. That's just the way it is. So of course, I have the interests of the landowners in mind, but I also believe that the way the bill stands now, you know, with the 10th Circuit ruling, you know, I don't think it's going to change much. I think most hunters will be very careful about what they do. I'm a little worried about some of these folks that are coming in from out of state, buying up big, you know, ranches and then trying to make a mint, as the good senator mentioned, you know, making some lawyers rich. But I also believe that our public lands are for our people to enjoy. And I don't know that this bill is there, but it got closer for me. And I don't think it's going to make a difference one way or the other than it's just going to say, you know, really from now on, until something happens, if we don't do anything today, you're going to be charged as, you know, criminally instead of civilly. That's really the nexus of this whole bill. I think we tried to make it a whole lot bigger than it is. It's just saying, hey, the guy that maybe accidentally takes one step over here is going to have to deal with our cops and our sheriffs. And I, to me, that seems insane, because I think it's ridiculous. That's not the Wyoming way that I grew up in. But I just think that's what this bill really was the focus. It wasn't so much trying to really narrow everything down about what's the corner, is it, you know, here, is it there, wherever. I think it's basically, we were trying to say, if in fact it happens, instead of being charged criminally, you're going to be charged civilly. We leave it alone. If we just don't do anything with it, then it's still, people are going to be charged, you know, with a criminal offense. And I have a hard time with that. So that's where I'm at on it.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Campbell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to weigh in agreement with what was just said. That's how I tend to view this. And I think it will reduce the burden on law enforcement, whether it's our sheriffs or our wardens, reduces that burden and adds some clarity that when, you know, we have someone who is traveling from land they have a right and authority to access. So I'm going from land, I have the right and authority to access, to land, I have the right and authority to access, and I'm not doing any damage. Then if those two are met, it is not criminal trespass. And I think that clarity is a good thing and needs to be in place regardless of how, this court case shakes out. For me, in agreement, the focus is on those public lands that we have access to. And if we're not doing damage, then it should not be a criminal charge.
Thank you. Representative, any other comments from the committee? Any other comments? Mr. Co-Chair, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Really appreciate all the comments. I agree with every one of them. These kind of bills are the reason we get paid so much to do this. It's a tough one. I grew up cowboying for a lot of my rancher friends and have always been very supportive of our stock growers and our Farm Bureau and care a lot about private property, et cetera. I don't think that's quite what this bill does. And the reason that I'm willing to send it on so that we keep it on the radar screen more than anything else, so that the rest of our legislative friends can get a look at this issue and know that it's not going away. This is something. So, and the second piece of that is, do we just simply defer to the judicial branch? Just hand it over to them because we don't want to do the work. See, we're doing the right thing here, and I do take exception with the fact that maybe it was said that we didn't follow any process, and we didn't involve enough people, and come on, folks. This is exactly why we have interims. This is why this committee exists. This is our job. We're taking up an issue that is going to be here for quite some time to come. This is maybe a first step in a direction, and we can decide later whether we're going to pass this into law or not. I think the committee's doing its job if we forward this bill and keep this discussion going into the legislative session. I don't know if at that point I will support this all the way through a third reading, perhaps in the second house of whatever origin. But today, I'm willing to keep this bill going simply because I think it's doing our job. And so I'm going to be an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Appreciate that. Committee, any other comments? Representative Provenza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's unfortunate that some of our sheriffs are out maybe helping with fires or other things. I've had conversations with them, and many of them have told me that they appreciate this clarification. And we know that corner crossing right now is legal. You can corner cross. This is putting in statute that that is the case. And maybe there's some changes that folks want to make, and maybe there's a perfect bill out there. But for me, the goal is representing Wyoming. And I don't know if anybody was awake in June or July, but the amount of people that showed up for public lands was astronomical. There were 500 people that showed up at the Capitol to tell our federal delegation that their public lands aren't for sale. And they didn't do that because they want to hold it in their hand and they want it to belong to them individually. They did it because they enjoy them, because they want access, because they want to be able to get to those public lands. And so this issue isn't complicated to me. It's pretty simple. Do we want to protect the Wyoming people from unnecessary prosecution for accessing their land? My answer is yes. This isn't about private property rights. This is about, are we going to ensure that we are providing public land access to the people that own those lands. It's not the rancher next to them, those are the people's lands. So committee, I'm going to ask you not to get bogged down in the details. Don't get sold on what needs to be a perfect bill. The goal here today is to represent Wyoming, and if there's one thing that is broadly supported here, it's that I want to go and step foot on my public land.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Committee, last call. I'm going to go to Senator Hicks, then I'll wrap it up and we'll go to vote. Senator Hicks.
I think that Senator Landon makes a good case, and this is often the case, is this thing, we got to work these bills, we take the public testimony. But along those lines, I think we need to be cautious when we have somebody that testifies that's an advocate for something and has anecdotal that they talk to all these sheriffs and chiefs. I don't know. I know there's 23 sheriffs out there, a number of deputies, 23 county prosecutors. I didn't hear from any of them, and I know they got a representative here in the office. So when an attorney that represents a specific position that wants this provides anecdotal testimony that this is the way it is, I just think we need to be really cautious. But I do think Chairman Landon makes a good point. Sometimes this is how the process works, and this is an important issue. I would agree with Representative Provenza, and it's not going away. But I'm just, again, I'm going to approach this very cautiously from a standpoint. I agree with all those comments, but I just want to add that cautionary note too, is advocating for a position and providing anecdotal testimony doesn't mean it's fact.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if you would like, Senator Hicks, you can strike that and recall the comments made by the sheriff from Carbon County in our first meeting, who said he wanted this clarification.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Committee do reflect back to what was said in Du Bois if you were paying attention at that moment during the day. I'm going to have a few thoughts here, and certainly piggybacking off my co-chairman, I did receive phone calls about this, and I have heard from people, and as somebody that is an active sportsman that we were discussing this at lunch, ridge lines that define hunting areas, that the sportsman is responsible to figure out where the ridge line is. That might be a 50-mile-long ridge line that doesn't have any monuments. This gets into a gray area because that's what happens in these types of law. And I'm very concerned about these devices. I'm very concerned. A monument is a finite point. We had testimony to that at our last meeting. And I think I'm very concerned that folks out there that may be listening, depending on what happens in the courts or what happens today or in the future in February, don't understand that it's a finite point and these phones are not finite. So with that, I have some hesitations. I think there's a lot of good amendments that are floating around in discussions with my colleagues up here. And I think that it was wise of us not to maybe make those today because we might have to extend and request another day of meetings. But I am going to vote yes for this because I think this is the right time to continue the discussion. We have big hurdles when we get to Cheyenne anyway. But I think this is something that was brought up to us. We voted on it as what was a priority for the interim. People have spoken. And while I recognize there are some amendments that might make this bill better, I think we're really going in the right direction. So with that, I'm going to call for a roll call vote on 26 LSO 0118.
Senator Boner? No. Senator Hicks? No. Senator Jones? No. Senator Schuler? I am. Representative Campbell?
Aye.
Representative Connolly? Representative Harshman? Aye. Representative Jarvis?
Excused.
Representative Provenza?
Aye.
Representative Storer?
Aye.
Representative Thayer? No. Representative Worf? No. Co-Chairman Landon? Aye. Chairman Byron?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 7 ayes, 6 noes, 1 excused.
Yes, Senator Hicks, I know where you're going with this. Continue.
So the parliamentary question was, is when we adopt rules and different committees do it different, is it a majority of the committee or is it a majority of both houses?
Majority of the committee was our rules that we
All
adopted.
right, just
Yep.
wanted
Thank you,
clarification.
Senator Hicks, for
Thank
that
you.
clarification. I think that's very appropriate at this time. Thank you for that, everyone. I'm sure we'll have additional spirited discussion moving forward, and I hope our colleagues will be around to continue to discuss that. With that, we are going to move on to hunting licenses, and I know Director Bruce was sorry to not be able to attend today, but she certainly sent a gaggle of very important people to discuss this. I was trying to figure out what a family of otters, what's a family of otters called? A family, a flock?
I don't know, they've all been trapped.
So with that, I'd invite Game and Fish up to discuss hunting licenses, and certainly if we want to, just so everyone knows, we're going to go to 26 LSO 0116. The title of that bill is Come Home Hunting Licenses, and why don't we have Game and Fish fill the chairs, and then we can certainly go through this, Brian, and then we can have comments from Game and Fish, or do we want to introduce it first? What's your pleasure? How do you guys want to run this one? Brian, why don't you go ahead and go through the bill, and then we got the gentleman in the hot seat, and we can ask appropriate questions. So when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, 26 LSO 116. And before I dive into the bill, Mr. Chairman, just two introductory comments. First, both of these bill drafts were based on, in line with the committee's discussion in June, based on similar programs in Montana. Both of those programs, their statutes are relatively short, as are in this bill draft, and most of that is left to rulemaking with the basic parameters of the licenses established here in each of these bill drafts. And then, Mr. Chairman, this is a comment common to both bill drafts, but the committee may wish to consider whether some direction should be given concerning both types of licenses. If you get one, can you get the other? When? Under what circumstances? Just something for the committee to think about, should the bills advance going forward for both of those. So 116, this is 6-01 in the online meeting materials. This bill draft would create a come home hunting license for persons who have family members in Wyoming and previously purchased a resident license in Wyoming. The staff comment on the top of page 2, I've kind of already noted, at least in part, this comes from a similar concept in Montana. Other considerations, the figures in the bill draft are placeholders. And then the other considerations would be, should licenses be limited to certain hunt areas? Should there be a temporal component to eligibility? And the committee could also specify that these matters concerning these licenses may be addressed by rule of the commission. So this creates a new statute in the Game and Fish statutes. Page 2, line 26 provides that the department may offer for sale come home hunting licenses to eligible persons. And if they are offered, they must be provided in accordance with all of the following. So first, this is line 31, the department shall offer not more than 500 of these licenses for each big game animal in any calendar year. Second, this is the top of page 3. Each eligible applicant must be sponsored by a family member, and the family member must be a resident of Wyoming and at least age 18. They must possess a valid resident hunting license or had a valid resident hunting license in the last 12 months. And they must be related to the applicant by blood or marriage as a spouse, sibling, child, or grandparent. Then page 3, line 16 provides that an eligible applicant for one of these come home hunting licenses must pay a license fee that is 1/2 of all non-residents license fees that are imposed for that particular license. Page 3, line 21, to be an eligible applicant, the person, and this goes to the top of page 4, first must be a non-resident who is at least 18. Second, must have previously purchased a resident hunting license in Wyoming. Third, complete a hunter safety course if required under current law. And then fourth, be sponsored by a family member, as previously discussed. And then fifth, during the hunt must be accompanied by that family member. Page 4, line 16, requires the commission to promulgate rules for these licenses, and those rules must provide, at a minimum, processes for sponsorship by family members, hunting seasons, license quotas if necessary, drawing procedures, possession limits, and requirements for the transporting and exporting of taken wildlife. Page 5, line 11 is rulemaking authority, and then a split effective date with the rulemaking effective immediately and the remainder effective July 1st, 2026. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Committee, any specific questions to what Mr. Fuller just went through? 26 LSO 0116. Senator Schuler, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was on the sponsorship. On the bottom of page 4, line 20. Can you line out what the process is for being sponsored by a family member? I mean, I know you've mentioned up here that it has to be through blood or marriage or a sibling or whatever. Is there something other than that that requires a process to be sponsored?
So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Schuler, I think the thought there would be the department by rule, or the commission by rule would specify you have to provide X documentation to prove that familial relationship. That's kind of what I was thinking in terms of process rather than the actual qualification of who's who.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schuler, and I think that's a valid question. They do have some of that already set with some of the hunter safety requirements, but certainly I think the department will want to weigh in on that. Committee, any other questions of LSO? Senator Hicks, please. Okay, thank you, Senator Hicks. We'll keep Brian close. He's not leaving, so I appreciate that. Game and Fish, welcome. For the record, introduce yourselves. Welcome back. Always great to see these familiar faces, but please, let's share some comments on this bill.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senator Landon, and members of the committee. My name is Doug Brimmeyer, Deputy Director of External Operations for the Game and Fish Department. And joining me today at the table is Chief Game Warden Dan Smith, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I believe you already have some of the materials that we submitted regarding just an informational sheet on Come Home to Hunt. And as you can see, there's a fair amount of appeal to this type of system. But with that appeal comes a lot of challenges for our agency. And from a fiscal standpoint, an IT standpoint, and as the bill is written, it does have some things that we'll have to work through with regard to managing a license system for Come Home to Hunt. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Smith, and he'll walk through some of the key talking points that we included in our informational sheet for you. And I think there'll be some clarity there, and we'll stand for questions after that.
Thank you. Chief Smith, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Dan Smith. I'm the Chief Game Warden for the Game and Fish Department. It's good to be in front of you again. So thank you. First of all, as it is written, I really appreciate the trust that you're putting in the department to allow the commission to set some of the rules on how this will proceed. As one of the talking points, as it's currently written, it says any big game animal. Just for definition, any big game animal would include antelope, deer, elk, but it also includes bighorn sheep, moose, and mountain goat. And so it would become pretty difficult to implement this for all big game animals when you start thinking about limited quota draws, or when you start thinking about preference points for moose, sheep, and goat, or when you start thinking about the 90-10 split, which is also written in statute. Implementing it could be a challenge for us. Some of those species, the bill states that there could be up to 500 licenses, and of course, some of those we don't have 500 licenses for. So through the rule process, we'd have to figure out what percentage of these licenses would go to this program versus to a different program. Any version of this bill that we can come up with that would go into a limited quota area could reduce draw odds for other non-residents that are applying in that same area. Implementation of this bill would require changes to our license system and accounting system, and I think that may be where Mr. Hicks is going to go here in a little bit. As we understand it, as written, the quota would come from a non-resident quota, and the only reason I say that is at the top of page 4, line 1 is one of the qualifications. It says they have to be a non-resident in order to qualify as an applicant. So we would make the assumption that it's coming from the non-resident quota. The fiscal impact, if it's coming out of the non-resident quota, if we base it on 2024 license sales, it would have an impact to the department of up to $617,439. And that's making some assumptions, of course, in order to implement that. Looking at just antelope, deer, and elk, that would come out to about 525,000, just over that. And then if you start tying in those other species I mentioned, that's where that additional amount comes from. Depending on how this program is implemented by the commission, as they create rules, it may reduce opportunities for other non-resident hunters. It may create a third category of licenses. So we have resident and non-resident now. We may have to implement a whole additional category of come home to hunt applicants for them to draw from. If that is the case, then it's going to start affecting draw odds. So maybe your draw odds are better in the come home to hunt category as opposed to the non-resident category if you don't qualify for come home to hunt. Or maybe only a few people apply for the come home to hunt, and so their draw odds would be much higher than the whole non-resident application pool. Of course, if you're offering half-price licenses in the non-resident side, there would be a revenue effect to the department on the non-resident side. And it's gonna, if it applies to all species, it's gonna take some additional tracking for preference points. And for non-residents, you can get preference points for deer, elk, antelope, moose, and bighorn sheep. So it adds another tier of difficulty there. If we apply it only in general license areas, there may be some hunter crowding issues that come up, because I'd assume that, again, making the assumption on what the commission does with rulemaking, if we're adding those on top of the already non-resident quota for those areas, there may be additional pressure there. And then, as I've kind of tried to describe, just overall, our rule system right now is very simple. Everybody understands it right up front. And this is going to add a little bit of an added layer of complexity to that. And I did say that tongue in cheek. Thank you, Representative Ward, for smiling at that. So other than that, that's what I've got so far. And I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Other than that, there's no complex thoughts there. Representative Provenza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may have said this, but what percentage of your budget is funded by non-resident licenses?
Do you know that? I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't have the answer.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
I can get that for you.
Thank you.
Senator Hicks, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate where we're going with this, but this is a lot different than Montana's, and I'd like to just contrast the differences. And so Montana's Come Home to Hunt program only deals with elk and deer. And because they do a drawing system much different than we do, it only deals with their general license hunting. And so this is all big game, and their definitions of big game on their website for combination is just, they say big game combination, and they designate it only for deer and elk, or an individual deer and elk. In Montana, once you draw the general license that this is designed for, so these folks can come back and hunt on a general license, they don't get to apply for the non-resident limited quota. And so those are two giant differences that add significant complexity, because the way the bill's drafted, we added sheep, moose, mountain goat. We've now said that they can participate. And I don't know how, and I'll ask the department, when we start breaking this down into pots, what pot are you going to take these licenses out of? The non-resident landowner, the resident preference point, the non-resident preference point, the high price special non-resident. So my first question, Mr. Chairman, is we get into this, was the intent when we had this is to really emulate Montana's, was just to limit it for, and this is for the committee, just elk and deer. Even in Montana, all antelope permits for residents are limited quota, and so they're all draw permits. So is our intent to limit it to, because that simplifies a whole bunch of questions if we just do elk and deer and limit, or in general license areas.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. And I do want to mention that Representative Williams regrets not being able to be here. I spoke to him last night and again this morning. This was a concept he brought as an interim topic, and we chose to take it up. And I think, Senator Hicks, as a fellow sportsman, I completely agree with your concerns, and I've had the opportunity to talk to not only the department, but other sportsmen, and I guess it would be, and we're not there yet, and we may not get there, but I certainly would be interested in limiting it to just elk and deer at this point, and certainly maybe contemplating, gentlemen, write that in pencil, contemplating the thought of more of a general season. I think that would get back in line with, and I'm going to speak for Representative Williams because he's not here, where he was going with this, and I certainly think it could begin to address some of our issue with invasive deer and elk that are, populations are quite high. So I think we can, I have some conceptual amendments I'm working through, and certainly would be happy to work with other folks on the committee, but that's where I see this going, Senator Hicks. So thank you for bringing that up and educating all of us, because there are complex issues associated with that, and certainly what the department just stated. Committee, any more questions of the department? Senator Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a question about how you could implement or enforce the section that talks about that you have to be accompanied by, during hunting, by your sponsor. So maybe you went to hunting camp together, but your father-in-law's on that ridge, you're getting asked to verify your license and you're over here, or maybe you say your father-in-law's on that ridge, but maybe he's at home. So how do you foresee that we could work through something like that?
Thank you, Senator Jones.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Jones. So we do have similar language for hunting with a minor, a youth, where we say that you need to be within shouting distance, you need to be able to control a situation. So I think we would probably try to follow that same line of thinking. You need to be with them in close proximity so that you could control a situation.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with good Senator Hicks in terms of, the first thing I thought of is, it can't be all big game. And I like the idea of just going with deer and elk. What would it do to your staffing if we just went with those two species rather than open it up? Would you have to still hire extra people to help do this, or where are you at with that?
Mr. Chairman.
Chief Smith, please.
Senator Schuler. I think the staffing that we currently have would be able to implement the program, and our field wardens and biologists would still be able to do the job in the field as well. So I don't see us having to hire additional people. I think it adds some complexity, but if it was just deer, elk in the general seasons, that's a much simpler lift than all species across all those categories.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add to, and that also, under the bill right now, it says the commission may be able to set quotas, and it sets a quota right now at 500 for those. So, and talking to folks in Montana, they've been able to absorb some of that into their staffing at this point.
In committee, I think it is worth noting that's, my understanding, it's more of a placeholder. That was a number that Mr. Fuller came up with as a placeholder, and certainly it's our directive to do what we want with it. Committee, any other questions? Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the intent was, right, we have family that our kids move, but they want to be able to come back and hunt with, brothers and dads and granddads and moms and all of that stuff. So how do we create an opportunity for them to come back? So in my mind, would still have to come out of the non-resident pool, right? Because they are non-resident. And then in terms of preference points, all of that would still be the same. It was just, how do we create that opportunity to make it less expensive? Because these are, their roots. So if you were just to simplify the plan and say, here's how we create that opportunity for them to come back and not cost as much, what would that look like?
Chief Smith, you're looking around.
Chairman, let me get my pen.
Yeah.
And go.
If you choose to, please. If not, I understand.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I don't know that I have the right answer for that off the top of my head. I think there's some great minds in front of me that can come up with that. And so I was just pointing out what we have before us right now.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Committee, any other questions? Senator Hicks.
Same line, and so how many non-resident deer licenses? Because so some of the species are statutorily defined, what the percentage split is between resident and non-resident. But if we're focused on deer and elk, that's by commission rule, I believe. What is that for deer and elk right now? And I'll follow up with the second question.
I think they are busy finding numbers. Chief Smith, if you have that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, so by commission regulation right now, elk is 84-16, so 84% goes to residents, 16% go to non-residents, and for deer, it's 80-20.
80-20. So, Mr. Chairman, and it gets to the question, and so then we can look at the total number. So by setting a numeric value of 500, we may overweight one species or underweight, and so because everything we else do is divvy it up on percentages, I think what we would want to look at is to say a percentage of those non-resident general deer licenses, because it's going to change every year. We go through a bad winter. You know, you guys over there in western Wyoming know what that looks like, and then we cut the seasons back. So I think that makes more sense and there's more uniformity with what we do than setting just strict numbers of 500 deer, 500 elk licenses. But that's why I wanted to know where we are as at percentages. And then what's the split, Mr. Chairman, if I can, what's the split? So it's 80-20 on deer.
Senator Hicks, that's correct. And just for clarification, and maybe I'm just not tracking what you're saying, but it does allow the commission to set up to 500. So for in those areas where we could adjust, the commission could probably adjust that percentage accordingly, I believe, under how you have it. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that does, and I think that does allow the discretion, because you said, particularly for elk now with non-resident regional areas, that you have to have that discretion as to where you're going to issue those licenses. But okay, so now we've narrowed it down to elk, or let's just use elk as an example, Mr. Chairman. Which pool do you anticipate? It's going to come out of the non-resident pool, but I believe we have, what, 5 non-resident pools? You got non-resident landowner, you got non-resident special, regular, random. So is there 5 pools of non-resident? Let's just use elk right now. The 5 non-resident pools, where would you anticipate those licenses to come out of for this program?
Chief Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, so if I could back up just a little bit, I think I can answer your question. So when we look at, right now for non-resident elk, we have 3 regions, east, west, and south. And so if you'll recall, either last year or 2 years ago, we took away the cap of 7,250 and we broke it into those regions. And now we set a quota based on those regions. So once that quota is set at a number, then there are all these pools that come out of it. So first, the non-resident landowners come out of it. And then you go into the preference point pool where you've got special and regular, and then you've got random non-resident. And so that's at least 4 different pools, but that starting number starts the same. And so what I would see is that we would still start with that same number, but now some percentage or some number set by the commission would come out of that to go to this program as well. And so you're adding an additional category within that quota. So if you have 1,000 elk as a quota, as an example, because 1,000 is an easy number, and if you took 20% of that for non-residents right off the top, so you've got 200 licenses, and then some of those are going to go to landowners, and some of them are going to go to the special, and some are going to go to the random draw and the non-special, and then now we'll have this extra pool. So each of those categories gets a little smaller, but they come out of that initial 200 in my example.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on that, so my understanding, they could not come out of the non-resident landowner pool. Those are drawn before you get into anything else. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hicks, that is correct, and that's by statute that they come out first.
And so the next thing in statute says is we split those 75-25 between preference points and random, and then you have special and regular. So they still got 4 categories. And why this is important, Mr. Chairman, is because some people wait a long, long time, even, what is it, 4 or 5 years just to draw a general elk license?
Some places, that's correct, sir.
And that's under the special draw, 3 to 4 years. And so what I'm worried about is where we take these out shifts those drawing odds. And it may also put these folks in line that they draw every year where somebody is in this, has acquired, what are we, 19, 20 non-resident? Well, not for general license, 3 to 4, that they're going to be disadvantaged. And so I think it does matter. And I'm not saying we need to put it in statutes. I think this is going to have to take a little study by the department. I'm just cognizant if we create a program, we don't want to shove everybody that's been paying to get into the program to the back of the line. And that's, so, you know, and again, I don't need an answer now, but it's one of those things to contemplate as if we move forward as to, by the next meeting, I'd like to know you guys' recommendation as to what pool of licenses that you would take those come home to hunt licenses out of. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hicks, and recognizing, as you said 10 minutes ago, and bringing the attention of the committee, these are very complicated pools, and there's a lot of different pools to drink out of on this. So I think that that's a good directive for the department, should this move forward, and should we potentially have this discussion in November. And while I certainly support it, you know, I think there's a lot of amendments that we could maybe put in statute to give some directive, or if it's the will of the committee today, we could have this continuous discussion, hopefully have some public comment, and then make a decision. Representative Worf, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we were to adopt this, would this not make Wyoming's draw process one of the most, if not the most complicated method that's out there?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, and Representative Worf, as you know, as Senator Hicks referred to, there's 5 layers right now in just the elk program. And so if we did this again, we would also have a split of a random and a point that would hypothetically be in there. And we'd have to enter an APA process to work that through our publics to see where that, but it definitely would create a layer of complexity here that would be unseen in a lot of other states.
Thank you. As we know, and we've heard bills that tried to streamline some of this, but it's not the will of the body to see those through. A lot of good work that got done on this committee from 2 specific people on the task force. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know this is absolutely speculation, because we talk about adding additional complexity and adding in, you know, but I guess my question is, how many people are we actually looking at that would, you know, qualify for a come home to hunt? I don't imagine it being tens of thousands of people that are out there. So ballparking, which I know is a difficult thing to do, what that number might look like.
Mr. Chair and Representative Campbell. So I guess we don't really know in Wyoming. And so we made some projections on a 500 quota, but looking at what Montana has done and talking to them, they have an average of, I think it's, because they have like different combinations, they're right around 550 total for the ones that they sell. And so we're anticipating that it would be pretty similar. We're not as big of a state or as populated of a state, but I think hunting is so near and dear to our people that leave the state that I think we'll see some participation. Is that fair?
Thank you. Committee, any other questions before we, Chief Smith, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, the texting I'm getting is the answer to your question. So last year, about 45 million of the $109 million budget was non-resident, so about 40%.
45 million of the 109 million is what I heard. Representative Storr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, that the idea of this program, we would not increase the number of overall licenses for deer or elk, I guess, unless we would just be taking away from the non-resident pool. Is that correct? And you would set the herd management numbers.
Chief Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Storr, based on how I would think that the commission would implement those rules, that would be correct. We would take it out of the non-resident quota, and that quota would not be increased for this program.
Thank you.
Committee, any other questions? Representative Provenza, bring us home.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is a question you should answer, maybe a social psychologist looking at motivation, but the idea that a reduced price to hunt for someone who's left the state doesn't necessarily keep them here, right? So we're complicating our process while also giving people cheaper hunting tags to move to Colorado and come here. Do you agree?
Chief Smith, once again, I will not make you answer that, but if you choose to, you're welcome to.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, I think what you're saying is possibly true. It's also possible, based on the program, that I could be a resident in another state and get a reduced price non-resident to come and hunt here.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Committee, any other questions before we open up this for public comment? Last call, seeing none, thank you both, don't go far. I'm gonna go ahead and open this up for public comment. 26 Celeso 0116. Fill the chairs. I don't think we have anyone online on this one. Nope, okay. So we're gonna limit to public comment in the room. Committee, let's listen to our good friend. Please, for the record, introduce yourself. Great to see you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jess Johnson, Wyoming Wildlife Federation. Couple of things. I think most of what I was going to be said was brought up as questions from the committee members themselves. So I really appreciate the discussion that's been had around this. I think that maybe there's a desire, I think I understood the intent and I maybe sympathize with the intent, but I think the long-term damage that can come from something like this is something we have to be really cognizant of. I'm also seeing a really sort of concerning trend of making a licensing system more complicated, asking a lot more of the game and fish, and actually cutting the funding that's available to them, not offering a pay for within this bill. This bill actually creates more work and less funding. And it's been something that we've consistently been talking with the Wyoming Game and Fish about. You know, we're worried about other things out there and think the cost of everything is going up. And so if we are continually bringing things that make life a lot more complicated within the department, which I'm sure they will be happy to do, but we are asking them of them without offering a pay for, which is like another concerning trend to keep moving forward, especially going into a budget session. I would also offer a little bit of maybe anecdotal evidence here. Is I am in the middle of teaching an all-women's hunter's education course. This course is for women over 21 years old, so full adults. We're not trying to explain the licensing system to 12-year-olds, but you guys, we spent 3.5 hours on this, and I still am not sure that if we asked them how to put in for something, that they would feel entirely confident doing it. And I would say that as someone who has worked in this for 15 years, there are times when things come up about the licensing thing that I am not sure I know for sure. So on one hand, while I very much value how nuanced our licensing system is, I think it's imperative that we manage species by species and hunt area by hunt area, and that they are different. I think that's a very powerful part of our system because it creates the adaptive management that we're allowed to have. By adding another layer that I'm not sure is going to have the outcome that you are maybe hoping for here, we are creating probably a deeper barrier for new hunters to get into hunting, rather than something that is a friendly process to learn and come into this system as. While also, I think, perpetuating this thing where we keep creating and asking more and more of our department with less and less and less funding available to them. So I think the intent here, as someone who actually would have benefited from Montana's at some point in my life. I'm not sure we're really getting at the heart of the problem. If we're looking at keeping young people in this state, you know, and I say this to everybody, you want to be in the state that is most friendly to hunters, you want to be a hunter, you move to Wyoming and you move here. you become a resident here. So if we want younger people, if we want people to come back, we have other problems in this state that are limiting that, and it's not the licensing system. So I think that this is something where like, I really appreciate sort of the heart that is behind this, but I think the outcome is far more damaging than we're going to expect it to be.
Thank you, Jess. Committee, any questions of Jess? Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else in here for public comment? Jess, come on back down. Senator Hicks, please.
Yeah, just somebody that I understand you kind of know the system and you participated in it, but when it comes down, and this is, I'm asking your opinion, where we have leftover licenses from all the resident leftover and the leftover, that there's another draw for non-residents that can participate, and then sometimes we even have leftover licenses. So my question really comes down to, is there really a barrier in Wyoming for non-residents to hunt here?
I think the only barrier, Mr. Chairman, Senator, might be a fiscal one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jess. All right, anyone else, public comment on 26 LSO 0116? Seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. And I'm gonna take a quick privilege because I have received folks that reached out about this, and I do wish the bringer of the original concept was still here. And I'm certainly willing to work with him on a number of the issues that were brought up, depending on what happens. I think that we talked about, we just heard the heart is there. There's a good intent here. I think there's a way we can make this narrow enough. And I think that Senator Hicks brings up a very good point that there are currently options for folks to come back and apply and come home to hunt. But a lot of these, I think we can work through. So with that, I guess committee, what is, Mr. Co-Chair, please.
Mr. Chairman, I too just wanted to offer a couple of comments because I'm not sure the bill will receive, a motion. But I did want to answer the one issue that was brought up, and that is there are a lot of our Wyoming people who were sent elsewhere because they can't make a living here. And there's a lot of folks who think that we're working pretty hard to make sure that they have to leave the state. I have two of them. One is an engineer, and we quit building anything in Wyoming, and so he had to leave. He used to be here, and he can't be here anymore. He's in the state to the south of us because that's where they build buildings. And the other one is making a living in the high mountains up in the state that's been mentioned as the one copied for this legislation here. So I just want folks to know it's not somebody trying to take advantage of coming back here. Many of our young people have no choice. They can't stay here. There's no way to make a living here. So the premise of this bill, I really liked it. I thought it had some good intentions. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. I voted to get this draft in front of us, in part also because of the representative who came to us. But you know what, that's where my comments will cease, and we'll see what happens with the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Committee, what's your pleasure on 26 LSO 0116? Senator Schuler has moved the bill. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Not hearing a second. This bill will not advance, and Senator Schuler, I appreciate that. And certainly to our good representative that wasn't able to make it today, I think there's some folks that are happy to work with you on a future draft. So moving on to 26 LSO 0117, non-resident native hunting licenses. I'm sure we'll have some comments. I think the best way to go about this draft and to keep on schedule is to send it right over to Brian if he's ready to work through this, and then we can go ahead and, gentlemen, fill the seats, and we'll we'll get right after it. So Brian, when you're ready.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, this is 6-02 in the online meeting materials. And Mr. Chairman, this is a pretty similar draft to the Come Home Hunting License, also based similarly to Montana. And Mr. Chairman, I can be pretty broad with the description of this, unless there's a desire to be more specific. But what I would note, similarly again, you know, the figures, the numbers, the parameters are placeholders and can be adjusted. On page 2, this would be a new section, and I'll just kind of highlight the differences. So this non-resident native hunting license would be available or could be offered for any big game animal or game bird. So that's one difference from the last bill. And then here, this bill, this is page 2, line 28, provides that these licenses do not count as any available non-resident license, but the commission can still establish quotas for the issuance of these. Similar, it would be a license fee that's equal to 1/2 of the non-resident license fees. To be eligible for one of these licenses, the applicant must submit proof that that person was born in Wyoming or had parents who were Wyoming residents at the time of birth. And then proof must be provided to verify that status as specified by commission rule. Then the person who applies must be a relative of a Wyoming resident, as defined under current law and the Game and Fish statutes, submit proof of that, and a relative is a child, sibling, or parent of the resident. And then similar to the last bill, complete a hunter safety course. Page 4, line 7 is nearly identical to the previous bill draft with what the commission may do in establishing its program, so hunting seasons, quotas, drawing procedures, possession limits, and transporting. With that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Committee, I would remind everyone, there are some similarities and probably not a need to repeat a lot of the things given the time of day, but with that, I think it'd be very appropriate to open it up to agency to discuss this, or committee ask questions. Chief Smith, or do you want to, committee, any questions of the agency as we begin to contemplate 0117? Yeah, please, if you guys would like to start us off. Or
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and again, for the record, I'm Doug Brimmeyer, and as you mentioned, Chief Smith is here, but I'd also like to acknowledge our District 7 Commissioner, Mr. John Masterson is here joining us this afternoon, and he's sitting behind us here, as well as our other Deputy Chief, Eric Wiltanger, is back there as well.
yeah, agency, if you'd like to make comments on this before we dive into our complicated questions, I'm sure will come. Please go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, and again, similar to the Come Home to Hunt, we provide an informational sheet, and this one's, while the draft language again reflects an interest in providing opportunity for non-residents, it also presents more challenges for our agency, and probably a little bit more challenging for us because of the licensing procedures. And as Dan's going to go over here in a moment, the non-resident licenses will be on an unlimited basis. And so it's a pretty, I guess, concerning to us how we would manage that, but we can work through that as we continue to talk through this bill. And with that, I'll let Dan touch on some of the key points of that.
Chief Smith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, again, my name is Dan Smith, Chief Game Warden for Game and Fish Department. So many of the talking points are the same from the last bill. Some of the complications, again, big game animal means all those species we talked about before, antelope, deer, elk, as well as bighorn sheep, moose, and goat. This one also includes game birds. Different from the other bill where there was a cap of up to 500, this one doesn't list a cap and specifically goes into that it does not come from the non-resident. And so maybe I'm making too big of an assumption, but if it doesn't come from the non-resident, I have to assume it comes from the resident side of it. And so this will increase competition for a resident license. Again, it will be difficult to implement on limited quota areas or with preference points for non-residents. And then a little bit different from the last bill, this one allows for the commission to set possession limits. And so in theory, there could be a commission that would allow you to have more than one. So you could have a regular non-resident license and then a non-resident native license. And so you may be able to have two depending on how rules are implemented, which would be a further complication. Again, this would affect department revenue. Calculations for this one's a lot more difficult because it's coming out of the resident pool. And so it's a little bit more difficult, but if you count just sheep, goats, and moose, sheep and goat, if I could say those correctly, based on last year, that would be about a $92,000 difference. And then as you add those other species, it would increase that. Again, this would require a change to our licensing system and associated counting systems. Similar to what Senator Hicks pointed out last time, this would create like a new pool. So you'd have an additional draw, potentially additional accounting for all of that. And so very similar to the last bill on the other comments.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Committee, any Representative Provenza?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the last bill didn't have game bird in it, I believe. Can you walk me through what the price of game bird tags are for resident, non-resident? Sorry, I keep asking you these numbers questions.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, I will have to get that for you.
He should get a
But
text
they
with
are, for a resident, it's an over-the-counter license. And so it would just depend on how many the commission would allow to do that.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to make sure it's straight in my head. Some of the complexity of this, or additional complexity with this one, is on page 2. I mean, it specifically says, right, lines 28, 29, that these are licenses coming out of the resident pool, because they're not coming out of non-resident pool. But then on 3, line 5, they're going to come out of the resident pool, but we're going to charge half of what the non-resident fee is. So I'm not sure how we approach that, because the fee is then probably 2 times at least what that pool of licensing is. So it's a cross-contamination, I guess, between fees and pools, if I'm reading that right.
Chief Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I think how we would interpret that is that they would still be a non-resident, so they would pay half of the non-resident price, but it would not come out of the non-resident quota. It would come out of the resident quota.
Committee, any other questions? Committee, any other questions of the agency?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Please. Oh,
Yeah, my apologies. I was just going to answer Representative Provenza's question.
please.
The tags for game birds, I think turkeys are excluded. I think it's $7 and $20.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
That's the daily rate for non-resident game bird. It's for non-resident for the annual, it's let's see, I think it was 74. And non-resident game bird, 12 months is $74.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions of the agency before we go to public comment? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Can't go far. Public comment. Public comment on 26 LSO 0117. Jess, welcome back.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jess Johnson, Wyoming Wildlife Federation, and I'm just going to ditto myself from the one before and just sort of caution on I'm not sure hunters have recognized that this one's coming out of the resident quotas, and I expect you'll start hearing from them once that lands.
Thank you, Jess, for that. Committee, any questions of Ms. Johnson? Seeing none. Anyone else public comment? Anyone else public comment? Anyone online? Seeing none online, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on 26 LSO 0117? Going once? Going twice? Must be 3 o'clock. Seeing none, we will not move that bill. It will not advance. Thank you for all the work also on that bill. Certainly a good foundation for a discussion sometime in the future. Committee, that brings us to 15 minutes early. Senator Hicks, please. Thank you, Senator Hicks. That's actually a great segue. Mr. Osterlin, we didn't have this in the agenda, but I'd like to get a quick update on some of the tasks we have done. And we will also hopefully get an update, not from Angie, because she's not here, but Director Bruce, but anyone else at the agency that would like to come give us an update on the landowner licenses, and also in there, kind of happened late last week, the Fishing Guide Advisory Board, non-resident come home to fish. Chiefs, gentlemen, however you want to start us off, if we want to start with landowner licenses update, that would be great. Chief Smith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dan Smith, Chief Game Warden for Game and Fish. As you recall, back in November, well, even going back further than that, the Wyoming Wildlife Task Force was looking at landowner licenses and made some recommendations to the governor there. I'll get a little closer, sorry. And then in November of 2024, the Game and Fish Commission directed the department to take out some proposals to the public. The intent of that was to actually get public feedback. A good way to get feedback is to send something out, and they asked for that feedback and they got it. And so the proposed changes that were taken out back in November was to increase the minimum acreage for landowner license from 160 acres to 640 total acres or 160 acres of cultivated land. They also proposed to increase the number of animal use days from 2,000 use days to 3,000 use days. They proposed to change the definition of a landowner applicant to require a significant interest in the property of 20%. And finally, they expanded the definition of an immediate family member to include stepchildren, step-parents, step-grandparents, and step-siblings. We took that out for public comment, and we received 311 comments online. Of those, 266, or 70% of those, were in opposition to those proposals, and only 9% were in favor. And so we did hold a public meeting in Casper. The commission had their meeting in Casper. We did move to the Casper location so that we could house a lot of people. We probably had about 150 people show up at that meeting, and at least 26 of them got up and spoke about the proposals. Most of the comments on that that were opposed, they were opposed to increasing the acreage, they were opposed to increasing the number of use days, but there was a lot of support for expanding the definition of family member. And so in the end, what the commission did was they did not make the changes for the number of acreage, and so it stayed as it is, right, as it was before at 160 contiguous acres. They did not increase the use days from 2,000 to 3,000, so it stayed at the 2,000. They took away the significant interest portion of that, and a lot of that came from, there was some unintended consequences of, we were trying to solve a problem of manipulation of the system where maybe I can take and sell you a 1% interest in my company and get you a landowner license. But by increasing it to 20%, we had some unintended consequences of, if you have 12 members of your family and you share the property equally, regardless of how big it is, no one in the family might own 20%, and that was never the intent of the commission. So they did not go forward with that. But there was support for adding I'm calling it the steps into there, and so that did get included, and we expanded that definition to include more expanded families. So that's kind of the update of where that went. And I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Chief Smith, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, you said expansion of the family members structure. What did that entail? What are we talking about here?
So initially it was
nephew or?
Yeah, so initially it was just direct lineal descendants, brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents. And so we included stepbrothers, stepchildren, who am I missing? Step-parents, step-grandparents. So just expanded that definition of what an immediate family member is.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. regarding those landowner tags, I know in the task force, we had a few issues, and some of them very much needed to go to commission for, regulating that, and some required legislative action. The one I'm thinking of is putting a cap in place for the landowner licensing, and what that looks like would require legislative action. So my question to you, and it also would go to the committee, if this committee were to take that legislative action and say, yes, a cap needs to be established in some of those areas, and we give that authority to the commission to determine what that cap looks like, what's going to be most effective based on the area and the number of landowner to quotas. So would taking that action, giving the authority to the commission, maybe solve that problem?
Chief Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, thank you for bringing that up. There was a lot of comments at the commission meeting asking for a cap, and that would take legislative change. And how that would be implemented, there could be various ways to do that. So you could just do a straight across the board cap, or you could do based on private land, public land ownership within a hunt area, or you could look at places where it's oversubscribed and maybe have a cap there and not have a cap in other places. But by giving that authority to the commission to allow them to do that, it might solve many of the problems that we were looking at.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Chief, I've thought about this a lot since my visit to the northeast part of the state earlier in the summer. And I'm sorry that I'm ignorant on this front, but when you reduce the license totals in a given area, for example, does that affect landowner permits along with those who are in the public and have to draw that way? How do you handle that?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, that's a great question. Thank you. So how it's set up in statute and how we implement it is that landowner licenses come out first. So in a limited quota area, if we have 100 licenses, landowners that qualify for a landowner license and apply, they come off of the top. No competitive draw, no competition. That's how the statute reads. So let's make an assumption or an example. If there was 100 licenses and you had 15 landowners in that hunt area, they would get 15% of the licenses. But we have a bad winter, and maybe this year we only offer 50 limited quota licenses. We still have the same 15 landowners, so now they just got 30% of the licenses because they would still get the initial license allocation. The only time that the landowners go into a draw is if there are less licenses than there are landowner applicants. And so that same 15 landowners, if for some terrible reason we got down to 10 licenses, those 15 landowners would go in and they would get all 10 licenses, and none of the licenses would then go to the rest of the public.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Chief. That I thought as much, and I guess I'd be curious as to whether or not the commission has ever talked about everybody sharing the pain of a difficult winter equally. It's something for us to think about. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Smith, how often does the Game and Fish Department go out and verify that the landowners are in fact meeting the requirements of a minimum of 2,000, right now it's 2,000 animal use days? How often do they do that? Or is it once I've established myself as an eligible landowner, is it assumed that I'm always going to be eligible as a landowner?
Chief Smith?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worf, in a perfect world, we would evaluate it every year. The workload involved with that doesn't make that always possible. We do not operate on the system of once you get it, that you always get it. And so things change. Animals change their behavior. Animals change their movement. Land ownership changes. Maybe I subdivide, or maybe I buy more and expand. And so as part of This last commission meeting, the commission has asked the department to make sure that we verify eligibility at least every 5 years. And so on some cases, we'll do better than that, but at least at a minimum every 5 years. And we're going to try to go back through within the next 2 to 3 years and reevaluate everyone, make sure we're all on equal playing ground to start with.
Thank you, because it gets at the, at the last meeting, I think it was Director Bruce that said mule deer are at 50% of state objective. And so I've wondered in the back of my head, it's, because the bottom line is if you got half the deer herd, but you got a landowner that's still feeding the same amount of deer, that's probably a pretty critical winter range. If it's a landowner that doesn't qualify, then that landowner probably shouldn't be eligible. And I guess I applaud the fact that the commission has set a time frame for doing that, but I would encourage you to maybe expedite that a little bit, especially for our mule deer, because I do think we're at a point in time where we gotta reward those landowners that are benefiting our deer herds, providing critical winter range, and stop giving the benefits to people that just bought a land so that they could get a landowner tag that don't really have that value. So I applaud that. Hopefully we can make an emphasis on mule deer. Maybe the commission can make that happen. I would encourage that if we could. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Agree, Chief Smith. Senator Hicks, please.
Didn't hear everything you said, but do you think it takes a statutory change to cap landowner licenses, or can the department do that through rule? I know we set landowner licenses, but we didn't set a quote on them in statute, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Chief Smith.
Senator Hicks, we believe that it will take statutory change to give the commission authority to have a license cap.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, that's the clarification I was looking for. You're not asking the legislature to set a cap, or we could, but just to give the department the authority to go through that process to establish caps for landowner licenses.
Correct.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Thank you, Senator Hicks, for that clarifier.
Thank you, that helps.
Appreciate that. Committee, any other questions? Any other questions while we're on this topic of Chief Smith, while he's in the hot seat? Seeing none, we'll carry on to, and thank you for that update. That certainly has occupied a lot of people's time over the last few months. We'll go to Chief Osterlund. Please introduce yourself for the committee in the record and give us an update.
Chairman Byron, committee members, I'm Alan Osterlund, Chief of Fisheries for the department. I'll just do a brief synopsis of where we're at as far as the new legislation, House Bill 5 that passed last year. Testified last interim meeting that we have our advisory board in place. We've had 3 meetings so far. Latest one was August 12th. That was one goalpost we had to hit. Another goalpost we had to hit immediately, as per the statute, was to draft a regulation that would permit the registration of watercraft that is commercially operated under any water of the state. So back in March, we started with the draft. We have had 8 public meetings. The draft the public comment on the draft ended July 31st. And we started the process of ciphering through those public comments. That August 12th meeting with advisory board, we presented those public comments to the board. Basically, 50% of the respondents of 40, we had 40 public comments, supported the regulation. 25% disagreed or partially disagreed, and 25% we couldn't ascertain whether they were supportive or they commented on a different regulation. Real quick, basically the comments were 4 of them that we were the majority of them. One was that the respondents felt that there should be a higher fee for non-resident versus resident registrations on the watercraft. The fees were too high for smaller operators, the registration fee, which initially we proposed $600. they needed for temporary registration options. Say a watercraft goes down or a trailer goes down and they need to operate the next day, they need to be able to do that via some kind of temporary system. And they had an issue with the July reporting timeframe. So what we had proposed was 2 time periods for reporting. One was July, by July 1st, and the second one was by the end of the year. And the reason for that is that we want to generate some numbers, want to be able to report back to TRW what initially those numbers are, not have to wait till the end of the year. So from those comments, the department did make some modifications to the draft, which we have sent out. Modifications were a temporary or a transferable registration type system. So if an operator is going to be using 2 boats on any given days, he has 2 registrations he can swap in amongst boats, which will allow them to put a registration in a boat that isn't necessarily theirs. If we have a breakdown on a trailer, a slip where they could put it on the dashboard of their truck. If they have a trailer that goes down, covers that. As far as the sticker requirements are concerned, we kept the July reporting time because we felt that was really important. And we reduced the fees from $600 to $325. And then the next step in the process is commission meeting in September. We will bring the drafts with the modifications to it to the commission meeting in Lander for their approval. With that, Chairman, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Chief Osterlin, for that and all the work that I attended 2 of the 3 virtually, and it was impressive to see. And a lot of applicants for that advisory board, actually, which was great. I think I mentioned it last meeting. Committee, any questions regarding that update? Seeing none, I really appreciate it, gentlemen, both those updates. That's super helpful. And at this point on our agenda, I'm just gonna, Mr. Co-Chair, open it up to general public comment, which we traditionally do at the end of these. There's been some folks in this room for a while that haven't hopped up, but I certainly would take general public comment, recognizing that it's 3:18 and the House likes to keep things somewhat on time, and we will have some committee directives as soon as this is over, and I do know there are a few online that may want to speak up. So please introduce yourself for the record.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we will keep this very, very short as it has been a long day. Again, my name is Jess Johnson of the Wyoming Wildlife Federation, and I just wanted to bring before you our new executive director and let him introduce himself because he will be a face, hopefully, that you all get to know as well. And just wanted to offer him, a short bit to just tell you a little bit about himself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Craig Benjamin. I'm honored to be the new executive director of the Wyoming Wildlife Federation. Don't worry, you still get to deal with Jess. And I will say, I learned 8 years ago when I helped her teach camo at the Capitol that I'm actually not nearly as good of a public speaker as her, but you still get to work with her. So it's been a long day. I'll keep this short. I've worked in conservation for 2 decades, the last 12 here in Wyoming. I live in Jackson with my wife Stacy, who is a radiation oncology nurse, my 16-year-old daughter Piper, who wants to go to school to be a biologist, and my 13-year-old son Ryder, who thanks to the Wyoming Food Freedom Act runs a successful burrito business. He also plays Team Wyoming hockey and Jackson Youth Hockey, so Casper is my second home. And he just completed his Hunter's Ed last weekend, which I redid with him, and he's very excited for September 1st when grouse season opens, and I can't wait to get out there with him. I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well. We've heard a lot of disagreement over some bills and some policy today. I want to focus on some of the things in which we all agree. And one of those is Wyoming's outdoor heritage depends on healthy big game herds. And as Representative Worf mentioned, particularly our mule deer herd at 50% of objective and our pronghorn herds have been in long-term decline. And that threatens our wildlife, our hunting heritage, and our economy. And we all recognize that no single agency, no single landowner, no single organization can reverse this decline. It's going to take all of us working together, but thankfully that's how we do things here in Wyoming. It's going to take our landowners continuing to provide and restore habitat, and the Federation is invested in working with landowners to keep working lands working. It's going to take hunters paying our fair share, and we are more than happy to do that. It's going to take organizations like ours providing volunteers and providing resources. And it's going to take the Game and Fish Department having the resources and the capacity that they need to do their job well. We've heard today a lot being asked of them, a number of things being asked without additional resources being provided. And I would just ask as you head into session and continue to do your work in future sessions, that you are considerate of ensuring that the department has the resources and the capacity they need so their great people can continue to do the great work that they do. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make sure Wyoming's outdoor heritage thrives for future generations, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Congratulations on your new position. Cheyenne's just down the road from Jackson, so I look forward to seeing you there. Public comment, any additional public comment? Old familiar, young familiar face. Please, Mr. Garrett, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm going to wear two hats today briefly. First, on behalf of the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, I want to invite you all to consider joining us and so many of your fellow legislators at CSG West in Jackson, which is just up the road from Cheyenne, where I live, September 16th through 20th. I think it'll be very informative. You'll learn a lot from folks, from fellow legislators around the state, and also from a sponsorship that GYC is offering to CSG West. Secondly, a bit of congratulations and also unfinished business. This committee, I am so grateful. I expressed this during the session that we got petroglyphs and pictographs across the finish line, but the unfinished business is that we need to get some funding for it. You committee chairs in particular worked really hard on that bill together with the chair of House Appropriations to make that a reality. So now we've got the second step coming up in this next session. So I promise you I'm working hard on that, and I hope you all will join me in that effort as well. And then finally, I'm going to take that hat off, and you know, you all deserve a lot of congratulations. Everybody in this room does. I'm sure you've all heard that former Director Nesvik is now the Chief U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service head in Washington, D.C. Just an outstanding nomination and a feather in everyone's cap. It just proves that Wyoming knows how to manage wildlife and can demonstrate management to the rest of the world and to our country. So kudos to you all for working with him so effectively and in a way that made his nomination and his successful nomination a victory, not only for him, but for Wyoming. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett. Appreciate that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and, anyone else in the room before we go to the Zoom? Anyone else in the room? Last call? No do-overs? Okay. Senator Hicks, please.
Mr. Chairman, well, we got just a few minutes. There's a couple items that I've heard today and then predicated on our actions from the last meeting.
Senator Hicks, let me interrupt you. I'm going to go to committee directives, and is that where you're going with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, let me get there in just a sec. Let me hop online real quick, close public comment, and then I'm very eager to hear what Senator Hicks has to say. So with that, go ahead and, Josh, you're in the room. Go ahead and introduce yourself and share some thoughts.
Members of the committee,
Josh, go ahead.
Members of the committee, Josh Metten, Wyoming Field Manager, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnerships. Sorry I can't join you today. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I just want to echo how excited we are to have Craig Benjamin joining the conservation community in Wyoming, and the comments that he's made on just how important wildlife are to the people of Wyoming. Just a quick story from my end. I've been thinking about pronghorn a lot lately, and Years ago, when I was working in Grand Teton Yellowstone National Parks, I loved sharing pronghorn antelope and the fawns at the base of the Tetons, and thinking about how they migrate all the way south and are crossing public and private land, and how important those partnerships are to ensure that those migrations continue. When we had students from Casper that would come and do photography work with us, and that was the first time that I had pronghorn jerky, and it was just given out from these students in Casper, as in just like, oh yeah, we have tons of this. We get pronghorn every year, and it just goes to show like how important these animals are to our state. And I've since had the opportunity to enjoy my own pronghorn jerky and do my own pronghorn hunting, which has been just so valuable and important to me. We all know how much we've lost in this state when it comes to pronghorn populations, and we've seen some recoveries, but we have a long way to go. I can remember that in 2006, there were more pronghorn in Wyoming than there were people. We might not ever get to the point where we can say that again, but that's something that I'm particularly proud of as a Wyomingite. And that's why the TRCP and 11 other hunting and fishing organizations have all come together to identify recovering pronghorn populations and mule deer as one of our top conservation and access priorities. Really hope to see the legislature joining in helping us meet that goal. And thank you for your consideration. Stand for any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Committee, any questions? And echoing your statements, Josh, not only pronghorn, but also our deer. Representative Worf mentioned it today. It's been mentioned multiple times. I just think we are still recovering from not only that grave winter a few years ago, but everything that came before that, and how important it is to support our Game and Fish Department, and not only through policy work, but especially through funding for not only pronghorn, but certainly mule deer. I think it's good work that everyone's doing. We need to keep working on it. With that, I have one more online. I think he's been admitted into the room. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and welcome to virtual TRW.
Appreciate that. My name is Eric Sharp. I'm the Development Director for Mule Deer Foundation. Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair, and the entire committee, thank you for allowing me to attend and comment. I've been sitting in for a while, and I've heard mule deer and the decline of mule deer come up several times. So it's good to hear that people are aware of that. I wanted to thank the Wyoming Game and Fish Department for their work on their new mule deer strategy and their work in Wyoming on wildlife as a whole. It's sometimes a tough job getting it from every direction. So thank you very much for your support there. I'm really here to address the concern that we have on the declining mule deer populations across the West, including Wyoming. Wyoming is home to some of the most important mule deer habitat and migration routes in the country. And we'd really like to heighten the awareness of this keystone species to the public, if they're not aware of this, to really bring it to the forefront. Every acre that we improve also improves habitat for pronghorn, sage grouse, elk, wildlife species across Wyoming as a whole. The mule deer have been on a decline for over 40 years. They're actually the only North American big game species to do so. And it's a combination of factors, both environmental, external. Some of those we can influence and some we cannot. But the Mule Deer Foundation is here to open dialogue with the committee. We want to engage the public and bring awareness to this issue and really help by providing the boots on the ground solutions, including non-wildlife friendly fence removal, habitat restoration, invasive plant mitigation, improved water resources, fire restoration and services, and work alongside other NGOs to really bring this to the attention at a much faster pace. Right now, it's a turning point for the species. They're in crisis, and we'd love to have your support and willingness to engage with the Mule Deer Foundation and be one of those organizations that can deliver real boots on the ground solutions. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for that. public comment. We greatly appreciate it. It's something that has been, a lot of good people have been working on for a long time. So with that committee, any questions of Mr. Sharp? Any comments? I think there are some really critical pieces of the mule deer habitat that not only currently have invasives, but also are currently on fire. So I think that it's something that's near and dear to my heart, just north and a little west of here. And I know our friends in committee number 2 are discussing that today. So I hope they make good progress on the effects of fire and the ability to fight some of these fires and the good things that fires do for some of our habitat. So Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would ask Mr. Sharp about the fire restoration work that we might want to be thinking about in the future as we're seeing a lot of fires around the West.
Yeah, you bet. Last year, the fires around Sheridan and the Bighorns, we did start a public campaign, put some of the funds directly from MDF into that, and then started a public campaign, put those funds directly back in with some of the bear activation teams, and then some of the water restoration projects and replanting. The other issue that we're finding right now, and we find a lot in Utah, currently a fire burning south of Salt Lake that we're working on another project down there, down fence, non-wildlife friendly fence that lays on the ground and becomes entanglement issues, and especially before the snow flies. That's a big priority of ours, to get that up off the ground before the snow flies, so does and fawns don't have that entanglement issue coming into the spring and laying season. The other thing that we're really looking at and working closely is working with Forest Service and getting some of those larger timber stands back to historical, to where we don't have these massive fires. The fires now are just at a scale we've never seen before. And then again, water resources and being able to utilize some of those water resources. Some of these, as I said, are preventable, and some of them we just don't have. That's in outside environmental issues. But if we can get in there and work on timber replanting and getting that habitat back to where it was pre-fire, that's great. And then you look at aspens that really need some of that fire to regenerate as well. So in some areas, we need fire to go through and start that regen process as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Committee, any other comments, questions? Representative Storr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been thinking about this a lot recently. I think that, and not so recently, that, the North American model states that wildlife is a public resource and it should be sustainably managed for future generations. And I feel like we really are failing to do that as we think about the future. I guess I've been thinking about the future a lot since I am old now, and I have watched this for truly about 4 decades. I think I'm also just informed from my work on the Revenue Committee and representing a county that actually generates a lot of sales tax, lodging tax, and property tax for the state of Wyoming. And also, I think that Wyoming really does have a number of potential different funding sources that we could consider. We know that, like, the state of Missouri has a small 1/8 cent sales tax that goes to wildlife funding, conservation in that state, and a lot of other states do similarly. And I do think we have a lot of options that we could consider. And I'd like to challenge this committee to take a look at that and see what we might be able to do. I'd be willing to work with the chairs or members of the committee to bring those ideas back to the committee in November and see what we might come up with.
Thank you, Representative Storr. Committee, any other comments? It's all for the deer. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Sharp. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. We are going to go now to committee directives. How I'd like to do this is I'm going to start, and I know he's been chomping at the bit down there with Senator Hicks and some of his committee directives he may have for all of us in LSO, and I'll work down the I'll work down the line. There's some empty chairs, and I know there's some to my left, your right, your viewer right. So Senator Hicks, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would never intend to purposely usurp the role of the chairman, but I do have a couple of suggestions for the committee to make. And first one would be, we still have another meeting. This issue of authorizing the commission to deal with the capping, or let's say establishing quotas for landowners, that's a very simple bill. And so, you know, if it's something the committee, we have time to have a bill draft, come back, work it at the next committee, but I would recommend that we go ahead and have that bill drafted up. Would be one recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Second one, again, deals with the department and funding. And many of us sat on this committee last year. There was a property tax relief bill that came. Just to remind you, that bill passed the Senate and went over to the House, and it was not voted on. It just timed out. I think this, and particularly us older and longer in the tooth legislators, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 years to get these things across. And so I would also suggest that maybe the committee, because it's an existing bill draft, we just take the version that passed out of the Senate, that we sponsor that again as a committee, Mr. Chairman, would be a recommendation for you as the chairs to maybe entertain those motions. And then the third, I just wanted to bring it back to the committee's attention. I thought some of the testimony that we just had talking about our outdoor heritage and the big game herds and migration corridors and all this stuff gets back into our last meeting in Du Bois, where we discussed non-compensated impacts related to industrial siting. The minutes reflected that we were going to take that up again at the next meeting. I appreciate we still have another meeting. I don't know what the disposition, I haven't had a chance to talk to the chairs. I do think it's something that we could bring at the next committee, getting back to within our purview, and was an interim topic. I appreciate, I sit here till 8:30 last Tuesday night at a committee meeting, and I won't do that again. So, but I just didn't know if that was the intent of the chairs to take that up at our next committee meeting. But certainly those are the three business items I'd like to throw out for consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Co-Chair, any comments on?
Mr. Chairman, I would just second the first motion, which is to draft the cap bill. I think that is something that we could maybe take up right away and get that out of the way and look for a draft next meeting.
Certainly agree with you. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hicks, could you repeat the second one? I didn't quite catch which bill we were talking about.
Real quick, Representative Provenza, and I don't know formality wise, let's stick with one right now and then we can hop to two because I also need some clarification on two. I think I know where he's going, but it is, the co-chair just mentioned and seconded formality. Do we need to do a
Dispose of the action.
yeah, a formal, we've had a second on a bill draft request. Can we just request that or is it a committee vote for that?
Just a voice vote.
Okay, with that, I think the committee, if you don't have any questions, conceptually, the cap, do we have any questions related to this specific bill draft request? It's authorizing rulemaking to Game and Fish to create the cap. We are not going to be setting it. That is what they requested. It's what we have contemplated. Representative Connolly, question.
Well, my question is, yes, I think this is a good idea to do the cap, and I'm glad that Senator Hicks went ahead and brought it forward because I'm 100% for it.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll do a voice vote for moving that first committee directive forward, and certainly happy to work with Brian and me and the co-chair and Senator Hicks on this concept. It's been discussed heavily. So with that, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Okay, we're going to get that draft rolling. And Brian, you're good at that. I can definitely discuss. Thank you. Senator Hicks, back to you. It's more specifics. I do remember that Game and Fish property tax discussion, and I believe you were getting at their certain property, but do you want to expand on that?
So just background, that was a TR committee bill last year that the previous committee, Chairman Schuler, and those that were there worked on that committee bill would have basically, so Wyoming Game and Fish Department's the only state agency that pays property tax on their buildings. No other agency does that. And specific to their office buildings. And so that was a committee bill. It was assigned to the Senate. It passed out of Senate TRW. We took it to the floor. It passed the Senate, went over to the House, and just never made it onto the calendar. So the suggestion would be, is this, we just sponsor the bill again and bring it back as it left the Senate. Does that answer your question, Representative Provenza? Okay.
Thank you, Senator Hicks, for that clarifier. And as the public, and we all know how often we vote on these, I am remembering that. I do want to, there's been a second from my co-chair on that motion to draft that bill as it came out of the Senate, but I do remember some issues, and I believe that died in my drawer with some parts of that bill that the agency brought up. But I think we're at a point today and in discussion that I can certainly support Senator Hicks' direction here, and I think it's an easy draft for, I can get you the exact number. Brian, you may have it already.
Mr. Chairman, 2025 Senate File 99.
You probably wrote it, so yes, that is it, and I think it's worth contemplating, certainly for the agency, and maybe learning more during testimony in November about how we may be able to improve that piece of legislation. So thank you, Senator Hicks. Does that satisfy everyone's questions? That this kind of coming at us quick late in the day, but I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the how quickly we're going through this. So with that, a voice vote to support bringing back 2025 Senate File 99, 2024 Senate File 99. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That is going to pass. We'll go ahead and discuss that. Agency, we can get with you, but certainly discuss that at our November meeting. Senator Hicks, topic number 3, industrial siting.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just as we left it at the meeting, I'm reading the minutes, and it says, Senator Hicks moved the committee continue its discussion regarding wildlife-related compensatory mitigators at its next meeting, and the motion passed by a vote. I'm assuming we're going to take it up at the next TRW committee meeting.
I certainly would be in favor of that. I think that depending on how the co-chair and I can get through that agenda, this is, we continued, in my opinion, to only scratch the surface on this topic. So, Mr. Co-chair, please, with your approval, I certainly think we can get a time slot for our next meeting for that continued discussion. I think we're obligated to, given our motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it has hampered us a little bit, as restricted as we are in our interim time together. And so we did sort of project that forward to the third meeting. We're going to have a busy day already. I think that at the very least, we'll try to get that on the agenda so that, Senator, you can reiterate what that bill is and maybe present it. Where we go from there, we're so limited on time that we may have to, a handful of us take a bill or two. It may not be a committee bill, but we can take something forward at that point. So hope that makes sense, but I think we can certainly get it on the agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hicks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that, having sat through a 12-and-a-half-hour committee meeting last week in this very room. I did follow up with the director, LSO, and then also some of the management council members, and they said, and this is just edification for the committee, and they said so far the management council has not turned down a request by any committee for an extra day if they needed it, just as if it looks like even without this subject that we're going to run long, it's just an FYI that management council has approved every request at this point in time for an additional day's meeting.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. And certainly, I think the co-chair and I were very sensitive to that, both being attendance of that management council meeting earlier this year that set that suggestion. And although we have said all along we're open to another meeting date, I'm proud that our committee has gotten the work done that we have gotten done in the time that we've been allotted. And I do recognize a lot of the other committees are just throwing that suggestion out. Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to, I'm grateful that we're working on that bill. I think it sounded like from the last meeting, there was a lot of potential amendments that we wanted to look at. Maybe we can have drafts of those in writing beforehand so that we can move those ahead. I'm not asking Brian Fuller to remember everything that we talked about for amendments, but us as committee members work with people to get that done so that I don't like to make the motion at the end of a bill debate to say, oh, well, we just changed it a bunch and now I'm not quite sure what it looks like. Let's sponsor it. So if we can get those in writing, I think that would help us out in making sure that we sponsor that bill.
Thank you, Representative Provenza. Any other comments on the third topic here? I don't think we're going to need any action, but I think the committee understands that there's some work to be done on that, and we will slot some time, and maybe one day, maybe more than one day. But, okay, working down, senators at the end, My right to my left, viewers left to my right. Anything else, committee directives? Seeing none, Mr. Co-Chair, continuing on, Representative Campbell.
Thank you. Perhaps a consideration, I was thinking along the same lines as the landowner tags, and giving the commission the authority to set that cap, because I think that's where it belongs, is with the folks that are out there to determine that. And it triggered a thought based on another conversation we had at our last session, and the concern with technology and the challenges with regulating that technology, especially in terms of, fair chase. So my thought was, depending on how the committee feels about this, is taking a similar path and drafting very simple legislation, giving the commission the authority to make that decision and regulate technology based on the information, that they have at their disposal. So it's not left to the legislative body to continue to have, how do we address that concern in a way that makes sense, and giving that authority to the commission.
Thank you, Representative Campbell. Certainly was brought by a good representative from the western edge of the state and a neighbor of mine. I think we all got different feelings from that testimony and our intense discussion about it. I think given going into the budget session, 2/3 a complex issue, technology changing by the day, I think we can certainly advance the discussion, and I would, and if the committee's will is to do this, I'm fully supportive of it, but I think at this point, and with our time constraints and our committee directives that we took out of management council early on in our survey, I think that topic, at least in my opinion, may be better brought, similar to what my good co-chair just mentioned, in an individual type situation. You can certainly work with the bringer of that topic, and I think he'd be happy to discuss that further and maybe bring that as individual bill or continue to work off of it for maybe the next interim session. So I open that up for discussion, but I think right now, at least in my opinion, there's room for that, but maybe not coming out of this committee directive today. Committee members, any other thoughts on that?
I think they can already regulate that through rules as far as, maybe they can or can't, but I'd like to see if, if they've got an opinion.
Yeah, Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can read what we have in statutes, 23-1-302A, Romanet 32. And it's fairly long, but it authorizes the commission to adopt rules regulating, limiting, or prohibiting the use of hunting technologies and the selling of wildlife geographic locations. Mr. Chairman, the kicker is hunting technologies is limited to thermal or infrared imaging, real-time video photography, or video imaging viewable remotely, or the selling of wildlife locations.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for that. Always on the spot, and I think there's an opportunity maybe for individuals to take that deeper if they may like. Representative Campbell, does that satisfy your comments? Okay, going down the line. Representative Storer, Representative Thayer, Representative Storer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll stick with the theme of funding. We have funded the Wildlife Trust Fund, Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Fund at $200 million and gave it a 4% spending policy last year that generates about $8 million for on-the-ground projects. But even that is not really meeting the demands that they are seeing for these resources for projects. So there is real interest across the state from what I understand, and I do think it behooves us as a committee to consider coming up with some ideas for other funding for wildlife-related work. I'd be willing to work on that.
Thank you, Representative Storer. Certainly appreciate that. And discussions at lunch with some of these, the invasive species that are beginning to, or continuing to be found in places that they're not expected, which that WWRT is working very hard on, and I applaud their work for that. Representative Thayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of funding, our second revenue source in the state, tourism, will we have time? I know the agenda is very short at our next meeting. Will we have a tourism update at that next meeting?
We will certainly invite them. Thank you, Representative Thayer. And you know, I think I'll work with the good co-chair and we'll make sure everyone gets a good time slot for the agency updates, which is so important to us. You know, I don't want to fill our whole day with agency updates, but it's so vital and it's the reason we continue to meet. So I'll work with the good co-chair and LSO and we will certainly, they're obviously going through some change. Or I think Ms. Schober was recognized today. I don't want to get this wrong, but maybe as the director of the year, I just read, for tourism in the U.S. So that's pretty special. We're going to certainly miss her. Representative Connolly, Representative Worf, anything out of the end? Okay, hearing none. Anything else from the committee? Mr. Co-Chair, please.
So just real quickly, I think I did hear that interviews have begun to, for Ms. Schober's replacement. So big shoes to fill, but my understanding is there's good candidates. And so who knows, maybe by November, we'll have an opportunity to meet who's going to be heading up that agency. But I just wanted to thank the committee for a great day, a lot of work. I look forward to November. We've got some good topics yet to come and appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep,
Mr.
thank you. And I think if any updates you want from that Office of Tourism, they're more than willing to give it to you individually. With that, some of us are heading home. Some of us are staying in Casper for the next 3 or 4 days for committee meetings, I've heard. So good luck. It's going to be warm tomorrow. I applaud you all for the service. And anything else from LSO, Representative?
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I'd be happy to run through
Please, we
the
love
committee's actions for the day. So, Mr. Chairman, the committee voted to sponsor 4 bill drafts, 26 LSO 115 concerning non-motorized fees and permits, 26 LSO 114 gaming proceeds outdoor recreation, 26 LSO 120 state museum fee authorization, and 26 LSO 118 corner crossing clarification. The committee failed to take action on 26 LSO 116, the come home hunting licenses for a lack of a second, and no action on 26 LSO 117 non-resident native licenses. Mr. Chairman, I have 3 bill drafts for the next meeting. First would be an amendment to 23-1302H to authorize the Game and Fish Commission to establish quotas or maximum limits for landowner licenses. A bill draft based on 2025 Senate File 99 engrossed, which would be a game and fish property tax exemption. And then, Mr. Chairman, from the first meeting, the committee requested a bill concerning the use of debit cards for purchasing lottery tickets. And per your direction and the co-chairman's direction, that was forwarded to the third meeting. So that will be on the agenda as well. We'll also have wildlife mitigation for industrial siting on the agenda. And Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I believe a mention of the Arts Alliance, an update from them at the third meeting, as well as I heard the Tourism Department.
Certainly, yeah, I would welcome agency updates in that third meeting as we head into our budget session. So we ask certainly Game and Fish, we have some statutory obligation to get an update as it relates to House Bill 5 and would certainly welcome updates from the Office of Tourism. So with that, committee, Mr. Co-Chair, any departing thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, I did think of our Wyoming Arts Council, the humanities folks. I wonder if we shouldn't at least maybe reach out, see if there is an opportunity for us to squeeze in a report just to hear from those folks. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.